This video was sponsored by Skillshare. 5 years ago, I went to Amsterdam and, inspired by the wonderful Vincent van Gogh Museum, I thought I'd make a review of the Doctor Who episode that featured the man himself. I believe this to have been one of my most divisive reviews, and given this episode's overwhelmingly positive reputation, it's unsurprising that any score less than an 8 would probably be considered inadequate to a fan of this episode. I don't normally like to dwell on past videos, but today will be slightly different. In addition to re-watching the episode for another comb through, I will show you my reaction to the original video in between comments. If you fancy watching my 22-minute long uncut reaction to my original review, it is available to view on my Patreon page. I'm doing this because, as a critic of the show, I believe that I've matured somewhat since 2016. Coming at the show with low expectations like a raging bull isn't what I, in 2021, consider to be good practice. Besides, we wouldn't truly realise how bad the show could get until Series 11. In the spirit of learning from past mistakes, you can learn a thing or two as well with a Skillshare Premium membership. Skillshare is an online learning community with tons of educational classes for creative and curious people. As well as classes and advice from successful individuals, they have workshops to keep yourself occupied with a potential new hobby. Whether you write, draw, photograph or film, Skillshare has a class for you. Since upgrading to a more recent version of Vegas Pro, I've been touching up my editing skills by watching some tutorials on Skillshare. However, if you're more of an Adobe type of person, Introduction to Adobe After Effects Getting Started with Motion Graphics by Avon Abrams might be your cup of tea. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, meaning that there are no ads and they are always launching new premium classes. An annual subscription comes to £7 a month, and the first 1,000 of you to click my link in the description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. Now, without further ado, let's get on with the review. Upon booting up this episode for the third time in my life, I found that I could appreciate it more for its placement within Series 5 as a whole. Rory's death and the Doctor trying to make up for that mistake makes for nice context surrounding such a pleasant outing/adventure. What I thought was even more commendable was that you could watch this episode without the context of what was established in prior episodes and still understand and appreciate the story. Unfortunately, the Doctor's attitude does ruin this scene somewhat, creating this false sense of urgency despite having a time machine.
Do you actually know when that picture of the church was painted?
What an interesting question. Most people imagine...
I'm going to have to hurry you. When was it?
Exactly.
As exactly as you can, without a long speech, if possible. I'm in a hurry.
And more of that strange pushing Amy he likes to do are examples of this. I actually found the pair fangirling silently in the background as Vincent took centre stage rather hilarious. The way the community ostracize and mock him serves as the perfect window to contextualize Vincent's depression, a word I seemed unable to utter in my original review.
A magnificent painter obsessed with nature who met a tragic end after his battle with his own mind.
The characterization of Van Gogh and the performance from Tony Curran are so damn good. I loved how he was able to bring so many emotions to the table, and the fiery, disagreeable attitude reflects how the whole world seems set against him, both literally and behind his paranoid eyes. Something I thought was really profound about this interior scene, though, was how, if you listen really carefully, you can hear "I Am the Doctor" being played very quietly and slowly on an accordion.
Churchy plans. Are churches, chapels, religious stuff like that something you'd like to get into, you know, fairly soon?
After a mystery murder happens in the street, the Doctor and Amy invite themselves to Vincent's house. It was quite wonderful to see all his artwork strewn around. Hilarious, in fact, at how little care the man apparently treated his own work. This is complemented further by Curran's performative philosophizing about art, colour, sound and vision.
It's colour. Colour that holds the key. I can hear the colours. Listen to them.
We then rush awkwardly into a monster attack that I'm still fairly mixed about. I truly think that an invisible monster as a metaphor for Vincent's depression is a great idea. Seeing it drawn both in the church at Orvers, or Ervers, I don't know, and scribbled hastily after the fact is curiously disturbing. However, the overly lit moonlight evening set, that bloody tail whip, and that one poorly dubbed bit of dialogue...
That is a good question.
To say this stuff is distracting is an understatement. I truly wished that the monster monster stayed invisible to the audience, because that very aspect made it more scary. The Doctor then took the painting to the TARDIS to identify the species of creature they were dealing with. I loved hearing the Doctor dissing Vincent and the Impressionists for their lack of realism. That was really funny. We then got this rather amazing shot of a recreation of Vincent's painting, The Bedroom. The attention to detail in the set design is applause-worthy in this episode when you compare them to the art pieces that inspired them. In the garden, Amy's got some breakfast prepared amidst a boatload of flowers the pair had mysteriously acquired overnight. Aside from the shot being rather aesthetically pleasing, I thought it was wonderful to see a mini visible Crephaeus lurking around behind them. As the group were preparing for the church paint job to commence, we got the big risk dialogue from the Doctor about meddling with the past. Even Vincent sensed the pressure he was under, and oh my god, this outburst on the bed was stellar. I loved how he was so visibly torn between both his loneliness and the realization that he'd let two total strangers into his house.
What are you doing here? What are you doing here?
It's truly heartbreaking, probably the best part of the entire episode. We then see the funeral march of the girl that was murdered off screen earlier. This is another part of the episode that I am rather mixed by. The moment serves as inspiration for Vincent, as well as matching the description he gave earlier.
You don't like sunflowers?
No, it's not that I don't like them. I find them complex. Always somewhere between living and dying.
But what makes me a bit grumpy is that the death is largely unimportant when compared to the rest of the narrative. The only urgency we get from anybody to get rid of this invisible murdering monster is this death stare from the victim's mother, and the Doctor trying to hasten the plot along at every opportunity.
Come on. Come out, come on, let's go outside.
Something as tiny as Vincent knowing this girl's name would have made his desire to seek out the monster a bit more understandable. When they get to the church, we have some really wonderful humour in this scene between Vincent and the Doctor.
Hey, that's the name of the show.
Just as he was about to give Vincent the long, soppy lecture about depression, he just silences him. That was marvellous. I could be wrong, but I don't think we've ever seen the Doctor have to wait this long for a monster to show up, and it was hilarious watching him trying to small talk his way through it. I can't believe I complained about this scene before, as though striving for comedy was a bad thing.
Doctor then begins to bicker and complain like a small child as he waits for the painting to be drawn. He has been living for over 900 years now, and yet he sits and complains that it's taking too long. All I can...
No, this is a different incarnation. Like, I do find his impatience kind of annoying, but here, I think they use it for really good laughs.
Think of to explain why this was
And I'm still going on.
Comedy just to pass the time. This
Laying it, did I literally not just complain about laying it on thick?
It on thicker than Latrice Royale's thighs,
And here I am laying it on thick.
He has been living for over...
The gang then try to take on the monster from within the church. I don't really have much to say here, as I believe revealing what the monster looked like in the first 15 minutes of the episode makes this scene rather... for lack of a better word, meh. This shot of Vincent swinging his chair around at thin air seems to indicate the monster's invisibility was utilised to save money more than anything else. They do like giving sub-companions chairs to use against monsters, don't they? Even the unartistic pair constantly asking Vincent where the monster is contrasts horribly with the constant thundering footsteps it makes. It gives the impression the actors didn't really have much to go on when performing this scene on set. The conclusion, however, made for quite the spectacle, seeing Vincent thrown in mid-air, clinging onto his easel whilst it was impaled in the beast. Suddenly it's pitiful, and that shot of somebody striking a dragon outside the church takes on a whole new meaning. What totally ruins this scene, though, is the Doctor interpreting what the beast is saying. His lack of aggression towards Vincent's actions is within this incarnation's line of thinking. He was willing to put the beast in The Beast Below out of its misery 8 episodes earlier. This dialogue, however, is not only totally unnecessary, as the images do a lot of the talking for us here, but assumes that we, the audience, aren't worthy enough of hearing its words. The TARDIS can translate Dutch and French just fine, but apparently not this creature dying on the floor. We then got a rather superb display of special effects, a visual representation of Vincent's artistic vision. This rather aptly demonstrated how Vincent was able to see the monster, which apparently I previously had a problem with too.
I get it now, he sees things we don't in nature, like the monster.
Stop. After a rather on-the-nose rip-off of the Shakespeare Code...
Oh, be good to yourself. And maybe give the beard a little trim before you next kiss someone. Your breath doesn't half stink.
The farewell gets extended to the Doctor showing Vincent how successful his works would become in the future. This is undoubtedly the moment that gives this episode its reputation. Strangely, Vincent doesn't question the fact that time travel is even possible, though.
Where are we?
Paris, 2010 AD, and this is the mighty Musée d'Orsay, home to many of the greatest paintings in history.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And I thought it was also a shame that they used some indie rock tearjerker song despite having Murray Gold on stand by. Apart from that, and the silly ultimate ginge line, this moment is quite nice. Naihe's passionate delivery, Curran's crying face, the spinning camera and rotating floor, all wonderful stuff. Topping it all off was how Vincent was still internally critical for comedic and emotional weight.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Sorry about the beard. I still can't believe one of the haystacks was in the museum. How embarrassing.
The epilogue sees a return to the museum where Amy's optimism is struck down by her inability to change the past. The close-up on Amy's face brings this sadness home. The pair's final conversation of the episode establishes that both risks, saving Vincent from being killed by an alien monster and showing him the future, would be so overwhelming that it would both inspire and frighten somebody to death. This leaves the episode on a wonderfully bittersweet note, but apparently none of this nuance went into my smooth brain 5 years ago.
This painting was drawn 2 years before he died. Why has this picture been changed?
Well, he didn't sell it to anyone, did he?
Let's just make sure our squealy little child companions...
Whoa. That comment was not good.
Doctor Who's only made for a laugh after all.
But it's Richard Curtis. He's a comedic writer. He did Blackadder. Oh, that was rotten. Really rotten. So, did it suck?
I give Vincent and the Doctor a 4 out of 10.
Oh, whoa, straight to the score. I still don't think this episode is perfect, but I seemed to enjoy it a lot more within the context of Series 5. There's still a few technical issues and decisions that, had they been rectified, I think could have vastly improved this episode, mainly because of this monster that they had to put in there. Otherwise, the spotlight on Tony Curran makes me want to find something else he's been in to watch, as his performance was truly awesome. This is a funny, intelligent, character-driven story that has a wonderful, if somewhat flawed, climax at the end. What do you think of this episode? Comment below your thoughts, or join us for some Capaldi grin spam on my Discord server. Don't forget you can support the channel by making a pledge on my Patreon page. I give Vincent and the Doctor a 7 out of 10. Since upgrading to a more recent version of Sony Vegas, It's not Sony Vegas, it's Vegas Pro. Rory's death and the Doctor trying to make up for that mistake makes for... The characterization of Van Gogh and the performance from Tony Curran... The only urgency we get from anybody to get rid of this invisible murdering monster. Murdering, I'm an American! Oh, Harry! Oh yes. Oh yeah. Dunk it.